We have a lot of legal matters to get to with George Parry, so let's do it. George Parry, former federal and state prosecutor. He blogs at knowledgeisgood.net. George, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Glad to be with you.
So we have been talking this morning about this police-involved shooting of a man named Dexter Reed. I know you've seen the videos that were released yesterday, and I know, despite, Philly being the city of brotherly love and all, that there have been cases of excessive force and having to deal with police and having to deal with suspects and so forth, the big city. And so I just wanted to get your take on what you saw. And, of course, you can anticipate, if you hadn't heard, what's coming from the family, their legal representatives, some of the politicians and the media. 96 bullets, 96 shots. This was excessive, even though the suspect shot first.
Yeah. Begin by giving a little background. At one point in my legal career, I ran the unit in the Philadelphia District Attorney's Office that investigated and prosecuted illegal use of deadly force by police.
Okay.
So watching these videos was kind of like old home week. And reading about it, and I just started this morning reading about it. It's got all the classic elements. You start off with a non-compliant subject who, if only he had rolled the window down on his car, if only he had gotten out of the car, if only he had followed police instructions, none of this would have happened. And the question becomes, who shot first? And frankly, from everything that I've seen, I haven't been able to determine that. But the issue will be
it's been conceded that Dexter Reed shot first.
Okay, then that's the ball game, right there. If he started shooting, then the police can return fire, and the number of bullets, however many shots were fired in response, is basically irrelevant. You keep shooting until you have ended the threat. And I saw on the video that once he was down on the ground, nobody shot him. He was there. They're telling him, don't move, don't move, don't move, and then they cuff him. So everything that I saw was good police work, actually. And in addition to what I saw, what I was reading, and this is just a classic. You've got at least one politician trying to make hay out of the thing by misrepresenting what happened, by claiming to have knowledge of what happened. And gee, it was just terrible what the police did. We used to get that all the time in Philadelphia. And they'd go to the media and start talking about, here's what happened. And when we would investigate, we would find it was 180 degrees out from what these people were saying. And it appears to be the case in the Chicago shooting, from what I can read here. You've got this one former candidate for mayor, I believe, who is going around saying, oh, yeah, this was terrible. Here are the facts. Here's what the police did. So you always are going to have that element. You're going to have politicians trying to take advantage of the situation to their own benefit. And then you're going to have a family, a grieving family, who then want to sue the city because depending on what city you're in, like in Philadelphia today, we have a city government structure that routinely concedes these cases.
Yeah, they're going to get a big check, and they know it, right? But we have the civilian political oversight authority, and they're part of this too. It's not another layer of bureaucracy to enforce a consent decree that's self-imposed, and just be another anti-police flack inside the system. And so they're focusing on the pretext for the stop, and the stop was allegedly for not wearing a seatbelt, and they're suggesting that the officers be stripped of their police power pending investigation because, to use the lawyerly term, because of the pretextual issue of a stop that perhaps shouldn't have been made. Your reaction to that?
my reaction to that is, if it's against the law in Illinois to be driving around without a seatbelt on, then the officers can stop the individual. If they're claiming that, oh no, he was wearing a seatbelt, and they stopped him, I don't know what, I'm not sure what the significance of that would be, but I'm assuming that when the police say we stopped him because he wasn't wearing a seatbelt, that's perfectly proper. And I watched the video where the female officer, who, by the way, did a very good job, approaches the car and she says, roll the window down. The window comes down and then it starts going back up. And she says, don't put it back up. The bottom line is this, and this is like 99% of these shootings. All the individual had to do was comply with what the police officer was telling him to do. And if there had been compliance, there would have been no shooting. There would have been no problem. I know he had a warrant out, or he was on pretrial release for a gun charge. There's a shock. So all he had to do was comply, and none of this happens. So the police were proper in stopping him. If he didn't have a seatbelt on, they're allowed to stop him, and they're allowed to ask for identification. They're allowed to have him get out of the car if they think he could pose a threat. I noticed that the windows on the car were tinted so that when the window went up, they couldn't tell what was going on inside. So I didn't see that the police did anything wrong here. And the number of shots fired, that's, like I said, you keep shooting until you've ended the threat. So, and of course, with these semi-automatic pistols that are issued, like Glocks and all of that, since the day the police switched from revolvers, 6-shot revolvers, to semi-automatic or automatic weapons like Glocks and whatever, the number of shots fired has just gone up exponentially, and that's just a byproduct of the technology involved. I mean, back in the days when all we had were 6-shooters, I'm sure there are a lot of people who wish that they had more than just 6 shots that they could fire. So I just didn't see anything wrong in all of the video that I looked at and everything that I've read about it. I don't think the cops have done anything wrong, which is not to say they're not going to be in trouble, because there's too many people who have a vested interest in coming down on the police who are going to push that agenda. And, I predict a massive lawsuit and a big payday for the family, and politicians in Chicago turning this into another George Floyd matter, and trying to make as much political hay out of it as they can, even if it led to riots or whatever.
Well, we had one person arrested last night, but this morning the superintendent of police, a black man, he wants the 5 police officers stripped of their police powers, which is
good.
Just.
Is that pending investigation?
Yeah, pending the investigation, yes. But still, it's like
no
one's got their back except the FOP.
Yeah. Well, usually what happens is when a police officer is involved in a shooting, they put him on desk duty, indoor duty, until the investigation has been done.
Yeah, that's what's happened.
What happened.
Yeah.
So that's kind of standard operating procedure. But
Yeah.
The other thing that's interesting about this case is the amount of information that's been released, because frequently the default position of police departments is not to release the evidence and just to stand pat and not mount a public defense, which only leads to more problems. And in those instances that I was involved in where we could get the police department, Frank Rizzo was the mayor back in those days. And Frank didn't believe in sharing anything with the press. But in those instances where we could get the police to release the true facts, it helped a lot to diffuse the situation. And here, I think it's a good thing that these videos have been released and the file is being made public. So that's a good thing. That should help curb some of the undesirable aftermath of this thing. But who knows?
I wanted to get to some other legal matters. Speaking of what is right and proper. So this, porn star hush money case in Manhattan where jury selection is about to begin. And the judge in the case, Merchant, has denied the motion to recuse himself, for him to recuse himself because of the relationship that his daughter has with all sorts of Trump political opponents, Adam Schiff and others. A D.C. Circuit judge named Reggie Walton went on CNN to defend the judge. So now we have somebody who is ignoring the canons when it comes to even the appearance of conflict of interest. That's Merchant. And we've got Reggie Walton, who goes on CNN to violate another one of the canons, which was with respect to cases before the several courts.
Well, it's very disconcerting to have someone making comments about a judge, and it's particularly problematic when those comments are in the form of a threat, especially if they're directed at one's family. I mean, we do these jobs because we're committed to the rule of law and we believe in the rule of law, and the rule of law can only function effectively when we have judges who are prepared to carry out their duties without the threat of potential physical harm.
First of all, Trump made no threat of physical harm in the direction of the judge or his daughter. That's just invented. Secondly, Canon 3A-6, a judge should not make public comment on the merits of a matter pending or impending in any court. And yet we have D.C. Circuit Court Judge Reggie Walton deciding that it's time to rally around the flag. It's nice to see how these the vanguards of our criminal justice system rally around each other rather than the law and their responsibilities as an officer of the court.
Well, I was stunned when Judge Walton went public and made that statement. I can't recall another time when a federal judge in particular saw fit to go on television or to go public and make statements like that. They're usually very careful about what they say or do in public. And I thought Judge Walton's appearance on CNN, from my standpoint, was unprecedented. And I was basically shocked by it. But look, Trump can say whatever he wants. He hasn't threatened anybody, and he's allowed to say whatever he wants. Now, we have Judge Merchant, who has referred to the case in the District of Columbia against Trump as the federal insurrection matter, even though nobody's been charged with insurrection. So that kind of tells you where Judge Merchant has come from. And on top of that, Judge Merchant has issued this so-called gag order against Trump, which is absolutely and totally unconstitutional. It's unconstitutional prior restraint of free speech. And there is no question whatsoever that that is an illegal order. Of course, Trump being Trump, he says it'd be an honor to go to jail for violating that order. But still, Judge Merchant, if I was Judge Walton, I wouldn't go out of my way to defend what Judge Merchant is doing, but it's all the same club, and they all believe that Trump is a terrible guy, and they're going to go after him. But I think they are eroding. Judge Walton is eroding the authority of the court by going public.
Jack Smith, speaking of the so-called insurrection case, that's what these impartial officers of the court call it. So I guess we should just fall in line, right? Jack Smith, Jack Smith, the prosecutor, he argues in a pleading before the court that this pending decision on, I don't want to get too deep in the weeds, but Section 1512 of Sarbanes-Oxley interfering with an official proceeding, which, I mean, the idea that Sarbanes-Oxley is being used to criminalize it's just lunacy. But I mean, this has the potential, if it is ruled as inapplicable, that hundreds of J6 defendants could go free and be freed. Those have been convicted under this section of Sarbanes-Oxley. Now Jack Smith is saying that even if that the interpretation of that provision of that statute would does not fit, according to a higher court, does not fit the crimes alleged, that the indictment against Trump survives anyway because of the quote unquote false elector scheme, and the false elector scheme still represents a illegal, criminally improper attempt to obstruct an official proceeding. And so Trump's indictment would survive even if the indictments of other J6 defendants didn't. What do you say to that?
Well, the false elector scheme is, let me put it this way. In proposing an alternative slate of electors, which is really what Trump was doing, that is precisely what John F. Kennedy did in Hawaii in the 1960 presidential election. The Republican governor of Hawaii had declared the election in Hawaii for Nixon, and the Kennedy people proposed an alternative slate of electors in order to keep their election challenge going forward so that it would have viability. That's essentially what Trump was doing, not only in Georgia but elsewhere. And on the day of the riot, they were proposing an alternative slate of electors. It's perfectly proper to do that. John Kennedy, and when he proposed his alternative slate of electors, they did a recount, and then they did a few other things, and finally it came out, okay, we're gonna credit the Democrat electors, and that's what basically swung that, plus payoffs in Chicago, won the election for John Kennedy. So there's historical precedent for this, and there's nothing in the law that says that what the Trump people did was in any way illegal. They were challenging the outcome of the election, and this was just one more way of challenging the outcome of the election. The crazy-eyed Jack Smith is just, he's talking through his hat again, but we'll see where it goes. He's certainly in the right court to be talking through his hat.
Yeah, apparently.
He's before the Supreme Court. Now that he's before the Supreme Court, he may have some problems with that.
One other matter I thought was worth noting, just so it's brought to people's attention when they are chastised about, blind belief in this alleged rule of law, despite the fact that it's being applied differently to different people based on their political dispositions. A federal judge scolding the DOJ on Friday because DOJ refused to allow attorneys involved in the Hunter Biden investigation to comply with subpoenas issued by House Republicans. The judge in the case noting, rightly, that the Justice Department is being a bit hypocritical, instructing DOJ lawyers not to comply with committee subpoenas while they have thrown other people in prison, like Peter Navarro, for not complying with congressional committee subpoenas.
Yeah, absolutely true. Absolutely true. And not surprising. I mean, Merrick Garland has been a total disgrace, just a political errand boy for the Biden people. I'm not at all surprised that they've done it, but yeah, that judge is correct. And it is, people talk about the two-tiered system of justice. This is just another example of that.
George Parry, former federal and state prosecutor in Pennsylvania, and he blogs at knowledgeisgood.net. George, thank you as always. Appreciate it.
Okay, nice being with you.
Thank you, and he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
You're listening to Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Hi, this is Rhett Rasmussen of BestHotGrill.com. We make the Solaire infrared grills, which are perfect for today's busy lifestyles. You're probably in your car right now, wondering what you'll have for dinner tonight. Imagine that when you get home, your Solaire infrared grill will be at 1,000 degrees